you can be doing is, if you have it, I've sent around paper if you didn't get one. You don't have to have anything. You don't have paper to write on it if you want one. Before you leave tonight, either on Blackboard, if you like to do it electronically, or on a piece of paper that you brought, or on that, you can scribble on that little goldenrod piece of paper if you want to too. I need something about the issues paper that you're working on. Something. It's not a graded something. The point of the something is, number one, that you're committing to something. It's time to settle down on topic and not still be out there with it. So you're making a soft commitment to what this is going to be. And the second thing is, how can I help you? So if you want to send me references, then I can say, oh, have you ever thought of going to this or that? Or, you know what, you're doing all of your references out of this database. Have you ever thought about looking at these kinds of articles? Or I know a book, or you know me, I always have a book article somewhere. That kind of thing. So that's what people do to send references. I don't think when I see references, I kind of know ballpark the point, you know, I know what kind of things you're thinking about using. Some people send me a draft of a paragraph or how am I beginning it, how am I starting these things. You know, they kind of want to know if the tone of what they're saying is professional in the way it should be or not. Some people will send me an outline because they want to know, is this big enough? Am I going in the right direction? Here's a list of the major topics. And that oftentimes I help people say, you know what? If you wrote that, you'd have an encyclopedia of this topic written. How about focusing on this piece or this piece, you know, and help you focus where that is. Now, this issues paper is, your audience is school leaders. Do not forget that. Most important thing I can tell you, because you write the most beautiful paper on preschool special ed boards, okay? And after I read it, I want to be a preschool special ed teacher. I'm in the wrong ballpark, because it's not what teachers need to know. You don't have to tell me how to do this. As an administrator, I'm not going to have to be an expert in preschool or special ed. But I need to know some things about what are my options, what should I have provided, what's good and bad about this thing from the leader's perspective. So don't dig yourself a deep hole of what a teacher needs to know about that. Yep. Again, it's closing the achievement gap. I can't go into the third grade classroom and teach this thing, so you don't need to tell me the actions the teacher needs to do, but what does the leader need to do to support that thing happens? Okay? So that's what that's all about. I've had people give me Venn diagrams. I've had people, you know, write me a letter, any type of thing. There's no expectation. Right now, I only know about what people in here are doing, and so it doesn't help very much when I don't know. So that's what that's about. Again, I'm playing announcements. There are some things in there like this that might be helpful. Starting in just a couple minutes, and I also passed out the spring schedule from our department. That's up here. If you didn't happen to get one or want one, that is up here. First thing I'm going to do tonight is talk about registration, practice test, internship, all of the nuts and bolts to do in this program that might be helpful to you.
When we write our paper, are we writing it? We're writing it as an administrator, or are we writing it too?
You're not writing it. You're writing it as kind of like a term paper type of this omniscient voice.
That
So
we
you don't.
give to an administrator.
But if there was a principal leadership magazine, they'd open up, principals would be reading it, or building directors or those types of people would be reading it because they're interested in the topic. You still write it in, you don't write you should or I will, or it's not that type of a.
So it could be something smaller than.
Oh yeah, if you say that, I'm going to be narrowing your topic with you.
I could just focus only on personalized learning. And
Yes.
Ways that the administrator can foster team development.
Yes. Yep. Exactly as it is in the front folder. That means we're accepting it. You're accepting it. I'm accepting it. It's good to go. If you want to write a rebuttal to any of the questions that are there, well, I answer this because this is, or whatever.
I was working in the lab.
I accept that too. There are times those questions were there's two questions in there.
My
I wish I hadn't
monster
written.
on his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the monster mash.
If you want to write a rebuttal on
It
that,
was a graveyard smash.
Right on your paper, and then you
It
will
caught
fold
on
it
in a
and
flash.
put it into your folder.
He
That
did
way,
the
if I
monster
get a
mash
flat
in
one,
my
I know there's
laboratory
nothing
in the
new in
castle
it.
east
Ready
to
to
the
go,
master
we're ready to go.
bedroom where the
If I get a full
vampires
one,
feast.
I know
The
there's
ghouls all
something
came
to look
from
at
their
and
humble
get back to
abodes
you.
to get a jolt
So I
from
am
my
not going to
electrodes.
be going into items
They did the monster
because
mash.
of putting the right answer on there.
It was a graveyard
Helps
smash.
to clarify what I thought I was
It
saying,
caught on in a
and
flash.
hopefully that's helpful too.
They did the monster mash.
Next week we do not meet. Next week's assignment is up already.
If
The
you
reason I
ever see
gave the
a
test that I
monster
gave
before,
showing some
dancing
reactions and all those kinds of things,
across
not
the
because
dance
that's the best kind of
don't
choice,
be afraid. Don't run and
but
shout.
that is one
Turn
way that
around
one can go
and help
through
the monster
concepts
turn it
without
out. Get down with the monster
low level
mash.
knowledge, being able to
Get
put
down
those things
with the
together so that they come
monster
back when you want them. We switch now to kinds of work where you're going to use those same ideas, apply them to real life situations.
Get down
So
with
when
the
you go
monster
into
mash.
next week, there is not
Don't
talking
have
to
to
your
hard
little
cash.
PowerPoints and all of
Just
that
deal
type of
with
thing.
the monster
There's 3 different options of what you're going to write.
There's a
I look
rock
for
and all we're
case
digging the
studies
sounds.
or,
Igor
activities
chains
that
packed
were
by
on
his
these
main
types
hounds.
of
The
topics.
coffin
What we've been
bangers
looking
were
at
about to
recently in
arrive
our
with
texts
their
and
vocal
lectures and so
group.
forth.
The
And
cryptic
you respond, you download
They played
that,
the
you
monster
respond,
mash.
and you
It
turn
was
that
a
in as an
graveyard
assignment.
smash.
Okay?
It caught on in a flash.
I'm having people that are turning
They
their
played the
assignments in
monster
so
mash.
late
Out from the coffin Jack's voice
you
did
don't have
ring.
just your time
Seems he was troubled by just one
I'm
thing.
putting two
He
things.
opened the
You
lid
still want points on
and
anything
shook his
we've done
fist
so
and
far.
said,
You've got one
"Whatever
point.
happened to my Transylvania twist?
After that,
It's now the
it's
Monster
other
Mash."
things you need to write.
It was a graveyard smash. It caught on
The
in a
only
flash.
papers are that were the leadership
It's
and
now the
action.
Monster
Right now,
Mash.
the
Everything's cool. Drax a part of the bag. And my Monster Mash is hit of the land. For you, the living, this mash was
So
meant
you
to.
can see I'm moving
When you
toward
get to
now.
my door, tell
Oh
me
yeah,
Boris sent
oh
you.
yeah. I'm talking about those little 2-pointers
And
of
you can
looking
monster
at
mash.
the videos and stuff. That's the
And
stuff
to my
that gets
graveyard
me. Papers
smash.
I'm not doing. Okay.
You'll catch on
Videos.
in a
But
flash.
that's where I'm doing content. I mean, you
Then you can monster mash.
And I'm kind of expecting that as you've done, organizational models and stuff tonight.
The Monster
And
Mash.
so I'm putting a little extra push on it saying, get caught up with those video pieces because there's some writing chunks that are coming along now. That's why we're not meeting next week is so you can do some writing. The writing pieces are now to go to the higher level. The knowledge level is that class.
Down with the
What is
Monster
it?
Mash.
Herzberg's theory, that type of thing. Now, can you use it? Can you see it? Does it matter and things that are going on? And so, you do one of the 3 options. I have had people spend hours and hours doing all 3 options because they didn't read the first line where it said, do one of the 3. So please, only turn in 1. Okay? It should be pretty self-explanatory, but if it's not, just drop me an email about that. And so you have time with this. This is just next week's assignment, so I don't even expect it for 2 weeks from now. But you got an issue paper too, so don't leave everything. You can't do everything on the Friday after Thanksgiving. It just doesn't work that way. So plan yourself out here what it is you're going to be doing. In your handout for tonight, it says change management. At the back of that is one of my 2 favorite articles on talking about change, and this one's by Michael Fullen. You'll be getting one in your next handout by John Cotter that I will be talking about tonight. Those 2 articles are something that would be nice for you to keep. These articles that I give you are not the freshest things off the publication, but there's some cornerstone pieces. This one and the Cotter article are really good frameworks for talking about how can we make a change happen, a big important change. So please make sure that you read that article and make sure you don't bury some of these articles. You may want them in other classes or in other projects that are coming up throughout not only this degree but throughout leadership. The case study is what I just talked about. You're going to get on and choose one of the 3. Spend about an hour. Don't spend your life doing that. Answering those questions. Finish up those incomplete assignments and work on your issues, your critical issues paper. So that's where we're going with things. It's much more now turning to writing things than it is to memorizing things. But don't forget the stuff you memorized. Make sure that's sprinkled in among there. That's why you learned all those things, so that you can say, hey, that looks like Maslow's self-actualization to me. I just read capstone projects for this semester, and those kinds of things are still coming back through people at the very end of their career trying to be able to explain their leadership, what's going on in their comps and their capstones and all of those kinds of things. And hopefully they're going to use it in their program itself. Questions on what I've covered so far? Okay. Schedule is up for the spring. The 2 major 4-hour clusters that are coming up in the spring are the instructional leadership class and the school community class. And they each have the 1 hour that goes with them. When registration opens, you're looking around at 32 people. There will be no class in the spring that has 32 people in it. So if you all go heading for the same class, it's first come, first served. Okay? And there is no waiting list except you can watch it online and see if somebody drops and add it on. But if it's important to you to have a certain class at a certain time, do not wait till the week before classes and come and ask me about it. Because I am willing to put 32 people on my own back and read all those papers at once. I am not willing to do that to the people that I lead, and will not. So it's your responsibility to get into classes in a timely manner so that things work out for you. You have a plan that shows when classes are going to be in the summer and next fall, so I'm not expecting people to come to me next fall and say, there's nothing I can take. You should be figuring those things out in advance and figuring your pathway along, and I'm happy to talk to you about it now, before it happens. Not so much when you're unhappy because it didn't turn out. So let's be proactive in getting the registration in. Different people's registration opens at different times. You can look online and see where that is. And if you need a permit, you need to just drop me an email or give me a call, and I will tell Barb. She will give you the permit and get that information back to you. In the spring, school community relations is in the same format as Lead Academy. It is not say I'm not going to take it in the spring, because a lot of people say I'm not going to take it in the spring because they're going to take it in Lead, and that's fine. We understand that. But please understand, it's not like I'm going to have a lot fewer hours if I take it in the summer. It's not fewer hours. It's more compact. And the other thing is, the project for school community relations is a community school project. If you can do that in June, good, take it in the summer. But if your project is something that you're going to be gathering students and going to a retirement home and doing something, are you going to have that group of students with you and ready to do this thing in the summer? Might it be better for you, and the answers are all over the place, but might it be better for you to take school community this spring? Because we're going to go to sites in the spring class the same way that we're going to go to sites in Lead Academy in the summer. So do not X out school community just because it's a week. It's not easier. It's just faster. And sometimes faster is good, and that's okay. There are also the principalship classes that are going in the spring, and so you should be, if those and electives are not on this list, if they're coming out of another program, and I don't have when intro to research is, except our section of that. There are other sections that other professors teach that you're welcome to take. So if you look down there and I need intro to research, but I can't do it on Tuesday, there are other professors that are teaching it on other nights. That's a TDD class, look it up, and you may register for that. Questions on spring registration or summer?
The summer school community relations, is that just the 3 credit hour? It's not?
It is the fourth. If you come all 5 days and register for the 4 hours, you can get the 4 hours within that. If you're going to only take 3 hours of it, you just come 4 of the 5 days. Yes?
If I need to take capstone, how do I register for that?
That's a permit at this point. Again, drop me an email. And we'll work that out.
Does capstone need to be done with the internship?
It's easiest to.
Because I was originally...
It is not required to.
Okay, so I was originally thinking about doing the school community relations in the summer, but that worries me just a little bit. It has never stopped anybody, but sometimes people have to rethink. Okay? You're like, okay, what can I do? So maybe I'm going to gather some kids together and do something instead. I mean, I've had a school committee project where they got some kids from their neighborhood and went up and cleaned the school playground. You know, it isn't impossible to do, but if you got this great idea of what that's going to be, that's sometimes people have to ditch their great idea because it's not the right time. But on the other hand, if that's the best time to take the class, then you find the project that fits that. It depends on which one you care about. Yeah. You may take the 1 hour class.
academy is 4 hours. It's school community relations for 3 hours, school educational policy for 1 hour. You may take both. Most people do, but you may take either if you need to. And if you're interested in it, if you email Andrea when the registrations come out and the dates and the times and the parking and all that stuff comes up, you're on the list and that you'll be getting an email. Send her an email if you're interested in that. Okay. I'll answer individual questions as we go along as you think of them, so jot it down if you think of it. We can talk about it later. One other thing that's in your handout here looks like this. You don't need to get it out. This is something that you might write on and you might not write on. The last written activity you do is a night that says inbox. On that night, you come in and you get about 15 memos. And they say things like, Johnny knocked over the wastebasket on another child's head, and his mother called. And the next one says that this teacher wants to have the Society for Preservation of the Liberty Bell come to speak to their class. Can she have them come to visit? Or and this one says they want you to speak at the opening of the new school. Will you come and speak? And what you have to do is you have to say what you're going to do as a leader. It's your inbox. You're going to pretend you're that leader. You're going to say, yes, I'm going to speak at the thing. No, I know I'm going to call Johnny's mother first. Or you're going to go through and say what you're going to do. But you're going to back it up. Why are you doing it? With concepts that we've been doing in class. You get 1 page of support. It can be this piece of paper. You can start writing yourself little crib notes all over this if you want to. You can take your computer and write it one completely differently if you want to. You can put whatever you want to in terms of, because when you come in and you can't necessarily remember all those theories, this is going to be your oh yeah, I'm going to use emotional intelligence to do this one, type of thing. So I gave it to you now so that as you're working through some of these projects and writing and so forth, as you're doing some of these things and you just took that test and you remember a lot of them. Now, how come you don't know all of them? Well, you're still learning some more of it. We'll do the rest of it in the weeks that are coming up. But you got a lot of them, so I gave you that. Again, you can use mine. I've got one online that you can do the same thing electronically. You can use your own and put your own words in, your own ideas, make little drawings. It's 1 page. It's not turned in. I go around and look at them, and you can use that for support as an inbox activity, which we will practice the next time we meet.
This is that December 4th one, right?
I have no idea. If it says inbox, that's enough.
You're not for that.
You may do it anytime before or after, the week before or the week after that. It's on campus. You get 90 minutes, go, and you're under the gun to get them done. Because that's the way it happens in life. Even this afternoon, and Barb turned to me and went, "Wow!" Because between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, my office just looked like this. I didn't have time to think about. I'm like, "Would you come back Tuesday? I'll talk to you." It doesn't happen like that. So when you do your inbox, you do it under the time pressure, and we know that. So that if your spelling goes out the window or whatever, that happens too. So that's what that's about. We will practice it next time around. And I will actually give you a practice set to take with you too. Actually, some people think that's the most fun thing we do in the entire class. Not everybody. But some people think it's the most fun thing that we do in the class. Finally, before I start this, I want to talk about 2 websites that are up. The website is up for internship. It is sites.google.com/site/UNOEDL intern. You're going, what? Okay, it's on all of that big map that says when the classes are all going to be. It's on there. The practicum one is now up. Not the practicum, the capstone one is now up as well for the capstone portfolio. Some of you will do both of those together. That's what you were asking about. And some of you will do them in separate semesters, and that's fine too. But there are things in there that you can start working on. In fact, the next time we meet, we're going to do a survey that's going to go into your capstone project. So you can start looking at that stuff right now. You can sign up for internship right now and take it 2 years from now. There is a single form where you sign and say, yeah, I'm working on internship hours. Read that document, see what we're expecting of you, ask us any questions so that you aren't going over here and we're expecting you doing that. The same way with the capstone. I am not going to spend a long time tonight explaining what those are, but except the purpose. The capstone is going to be combined with comps, and it is based on the 6 standards. And it is judged by the entire EDL faculty. So that notebook, which are in right now, every faculty member signs and says, yes, you're ready to graduate, you're ready to be certified. We agree, you've got all 6 standards covered. The internship notebook says, here's my 70 hours, here's the things I did, this is what I learned from this, here's my reflection on my leadership. That goes to the person that's teaching internship. The rest of us don't read it. And yet, the same article or the same artifact can be in both of those things. Because one says, we're ready to graduate you, it's like comps. The other one is saying, yes, you've got your work in the field completed. So there is overlap. We know that. We expect it. We try to do that so you don't have to do 2 separate entire things. Okay? So look at those 2 things if you're getting close to that.
Where's I'm on the intern site. So is the capstone on the same site?
No, the capstone has the same thing except it says UNO cap. Okay. UNOEDL cap instead of intern. Okay. So if you cross out intern and put cap in instead, you'll get the other one. Okay. Thank you. All right. Tonight I did not give you the slides. Tonight I gave you an outline of what we're going to be doing. It looks like this, and some of our activities follow that. So you might want to be in a note writing mode tonight on change management. Change is probably one of the 2 pieces that I call the heart and the soul of leadership as far as I'm concerned. And is change the heart or the soul? I don't know. But nothing ever stays the same. I always, I was like, okay, I got the stuff all ready for capstone now. As soon as that's crossing off my desk, I immediately have to start changing it before I even have people in it. Things change. Praxis test comes up, or whatever those things are. At no time are you ever able to say, we've arrived. And by the way, nobody ever hires you to keep things the way they were. They want you to be able to manage change. And really, it cuts across every class that you take, every book. If you go to the bookstore and you just look at the books on management, there's one whole thing about managing money, one whole thing about leading people, and the third thing is all about handling change. If they had the answer, we'd only need one book. But the answer, like everything else, is situational and depends. But there are some commonalities. And if you want to go out and buy one of those books off the bookshelf, I've got the one that I like the very, very best. It's called Leading Every Day. And it's got all kinds of leading stuff in it. But they're little short lesson pieces where you can read what's going on. This is an entire entry, for example. It's research-based. It's interesting to read, and then it asks you pointed questions, and it's listed by day, so you're supposed to do it daily. And guess what? Over a fourth of this book, it's about leading resistance to change, bringing groups through change, planning the vision for change. It's all about change. The book I'm using tonight looks like this. I don't expect you to go out and buy it, but sometimes when you go on the Simple Truth site, you can find it for $5 or $6. But this is my source for my organization of what it is. It says 21 ways to inspire change. Some of the 21 we'll go through pretty fast. Some of the others we'll talk about and even practice a bit. First thing that these authors talk about, however, is that change is something that we are almost addicted to. I mean, you think about commercials. They never say, and here it is, it's the same old thing, right? And it's like, what do they always say? New and improved, and, they put starbursts on things that say, the new car, the new whatever. We are a society that's addicted to change. It makes us feel like we're improving. Now, just changing does not mean we're improving. But it makes us feel good, like we're accomplishing things. The problem with being addicted to change is that we can spend our whole lives solving non-problems. I worked for someone who had some major problems in the organization that they ignored entirely and spent their time solving minutia, solving little bitty things that, and micromanaging stuff that didn't matter. It was an elementary school and managing how many squares apart on the tile the children were to stand in the lunch line. But the whole problem of the students respecting one another kind of went by the wayside. Why do they solve the minutia? I'm hearing it. What? It's easy to do. I can see whether you're 2 squares apart or 3 squares apart. I can't look and see whether you've been respecting your classmates all day. And it also makes me feel like I did something. Look, I solved the problem. Woohoo! I'm ignoring the big things that really matter. Most schools are designed to solve yesterday's problem. It's like that feedback loop. It's so long, So right now, I lived long enough in the pre-computer era that when computers first came out, they told us that we needed to teach our children to program. And so for several years, I taught children to do basic programming. And they made little programs where they made Christmas trees jump up and down, or their things divide, or these little programs so that they'd understand computers. The kids today don't need that, don't care about that. That's something they do. Programming language is something that's done in a whole different place. We were solving a non-problem. By the time those kids were grown up, they are now running high-tech industries. By the way, the one that I remember in that class that was really good at it is now designing games for Warner Brothers and making many times my salary. Many, many times my salary. I don't know whether that he's feeling as good about what he does for the world as what I do, but he's laughing all the way to the bank, I guess. Anyway, we solve yesterday's problems because we look around and see what's happening today and we put it in kindergarten. That's not the world that those kids are going to be facing as an adult. It's a tough thing to have to deal with. Secondly, we solve our problems oftentimes first order instead of second order. First order change is incremental. It's like going into the swimming pool on a cold morning. Some people put their toe in, and then they put their foot in, and then they put the whole leg in, and they're freezing all the time. Okay, and other people run off the diving board and dive in. They get right down to the problem and they get it solved. That's a second order change. I've heard first order change be called rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, because sometimes those little bitty incremental things don't do enough to really fix what's going on, and they aren't getting at the root of what the problem really is. So the problem of the second order change is like when you dive into the pool head first. It's a huge shock, and you have to deal with the shock of what that big change is. People don't have time to get used to it. But whatever's going on, there is always change. And people always like change. They like to have the newest music, the most modern clothing, whatever those things are, until you ask them to change. Change is good. You go first, right? So let's talk about this dynamics of change. And this comes from a book called Culturally Proficient Leadership, which is, I highly recommend that book too. I know you're going to have this whole book to read some days when you're done with this class. I had that too, but I read it eventually, so now I can tell you. So this comes from Culturally Proficient Leadership, and it's the 7 dynamics of change. And so we're going to practice it for just a minute. You're going to get up and find someone that you haven't talked to much, and go and stand in front of them right now. And we like groups of 2. If we have to have a group of 3, that's okay. So everybody, you don't need anything. Just get up, stand, face somebody.
All right, here we go. How you doing? All right.
Keep going.
When I flick the lights? Okay. You're going to look at this person, and when you're done looking at them in a nice, respectful manner, you're going to turn your back to them. Okay? What we're going to be doing now is we're going to look and see how well we pay attention to our environment. So look your person over. When you're done looking at them, turn your back. Okay, waiting for all the backs. Almost. Yep, turn your back so you can't see them anymore. All right. Change 5 things about yourself, please. Change 5 things.
Good luck to you.
Now, when you've changed 5 things, you're going to turn back around and you're going to see if you can find the 5 things that the other person changed. So don't do it till you're both ready, because otherwise, okay, looks like we're about ready. All right, turn back around and find the 5 things they changed.
I have 4, but it's pretty simple. I got 2. Oh, and switch.
Okay, now back. Oh, you gotta be here until after class tonight. You gotta stay with me, back to back. All right. Here we go. Change another 5 things. Okay, when you turn around, you only get 1 minute to figure out what the other people are doing. So you may not find them all. So you're going to be real observant, because you only get 1 minute to see how many you can find in each other. Ready? Go!
You got your heroes up. You got your blaster back I guess mine were a little bit obvious.
Okay, turn back around, back to back. Now we're going to change 15 things. Go. 15 things. Back to back. Change 15 things. Gee, I don't see everybody. You know what? I think it's time to sit down and talk about what's going on here.
We went as far as we can go. We have like 5 paragraphs. We went as far as we could go.
Okay, let's talk about what we were seeing there, okay, in this 7 dynamics of change. And yes, when I did these things purposefully about the 15 things. I have never seen people just jump right in and go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've never seen that happen. So you feel you're kind of felt after to me that you match the pattern. Let's look at the dynamics when we ask people or a group or a nation or a school or a child or whatever to change. These things come into play. Number 1, people will feel awkward and uncomfortable. When I first asked you to look at each other, what did you hear around the room? Nervous laughter. All I did is said, look at the person in front of you, and there was nervous laughter at that point. And then when I asked you to start changing things about yourselves, were you feeling uncomfortable? And the more things that, did it feel strange? Okay? Now think about that when you're asking people to change how they do things that they've done for 30 years or a lifetime. People will think first about what they lose. What was the first thing you changed? Many times if people take something like their necklace off or their glasses off, and I was seeing that happening, but it was a sense of loss to feel funny with not having your shoes on or not, again, you were feeling first about what you had to lose. Even when you're giving people things. I remember very plainly as an administrator walking into the office, slamming down some things out of the teacher's view, slamming down everything I have in my hand. I said, if I went down this hall and gave every teacher $10, I would have 5 complaints. 5 of them would tell me it wasn't enough. 5 of them would tell me that somebody else got it and they didn't deserve it. And 5 of them would tell me it should have been a different, we should have spent it for something else. Nobody would have said thank you. What I wasn't realizing was even when it's something that's for the people's good, they will grieve over it. We got rid of an outdated system that people complained about for years and years and years. And when we got rid of it, all of a sudden they found out they loved this thing. Oh, we aren't going to use the what you call it cards anymore. I'm like, you complained about it and now that we're getting rid of it, what's the matter with you? Well, people are afraid about what they're losing because we're asking them to do something unfamiliar, and unfamiliar is fearful. People will feel alone even though everybody's in the same boat. Did you look across the room very much and see what other people were changing to figure out what to change? In most cases, people looked to themselves and they didn't go, oh, she did that, I'm going to do that too. Change makes people feel isolated. Or groups feel isolated. Nobody's ever had to do this type of thing before. Instead of looking back and seeing how in history we've done this kind of change over and over and over again, it feels new. You see that with middle school kids all the time, don't you? They're the only one that's ever had a pimple. They're the only one that's ever that can't remember their locker combination. They're the only, they don't realize that everybody else in the class has just gone through that same thing. I used to teach first-year teachers. And every week I had to deal with somebody who was bawling in class because a child had used some really tough language on him. And I'm like, didn't you pay attention last week when we were helping your friend next to you about this? Until it came to them, it didn't feel the same. And when it happened to them, they felt like it never happened to anybody before. People can only handle so much. Some people started opting out when I asked for 5 things. I'm only doing 2. Come on. You know? Some people are like, I did 5. Can I just undo the 5 I did before? I heard that. And when I said 15, nobody started jumping into the activity at all. Because you can only take so much. You get on change overload. We ask our teaching professionals to change and rechange. Oh, and now change what you did last year. And now this year, and they become change resistant. Okay, just tell me what it is. I'll pretend I'm doing it, and I'm going to go back in my class and do what I did anyway. Yeah, there you are. We've all been there. Yes.
I had a question. As a first-year administrator, whether head principal or assistant, say there's a lot of things that you think need to be changed. What's a good number of things to change?
How many were you comfortable doing with the activity we just did? If I said 2, would that have been comfortable? Probably. 5 got to be starting to be a bit much. And again, it has to be how much time, how much investing. If it's surface, deck share types of things, you can do more. But if it's a deep down change, you may only do 1, and it may take 3 to 5 years to do that one thing.
How do you pronounce that B-H-A-G word?
BHAG. That's the way he pronounces it anyway. People are at different levels of readiness. Teachers, we know that. There's kids that come in, they already know their alphabet, and there's kids that you work all year and they still have 4 letters they mix up. You know, we know this. But it's true of change too. Some people are just waiting for this change to happen. Oh my gosh, thank you, I've been waiting for this for 20 years. And other people are like, not in my lifetime. Not because necessarily they can't do it, or that they won't do it, because they aren't ready. They haven't got themselves mentally prepared to do this, or physically don't have the preparations for that they need. People are concerned that they don't have enough resources. You want me to do what? Well, what will happen with this? You know, will this? I had the longest drawn out. If it was 1 minute, it was at least 35 minutes. I had at least a 35-minute conference with 3 teachers because on one day we were changing lunch periods, and on that day they felt that they were going to miss 5 minutes of their plan time. And I said to them at the end of the 35 minutes, do you realize we've spent more than a half an hour talking about this, and that if the worst thing happens, that was 5 minutes? They kept right on talking. You know, they were so concerned about losing that resource that they were giving away that same resource with both hands. And what happened when we sat back down? Does anybody still have their glasses on upside down? No. What's the first thing you did? You put everything back the way it belongs. As soon as the pressures go, so we do this great change. Okay, everybody, we're going to do this new plan. We're going to do it this way. Okay, I'm coming around to see how you're doing it. Whew, I got the staff. They're all going to do this change. I can go on and work on something new. And when I go on and work on something new, they go back to doing something old. And you come back after, you go, we worked on this all fall. And I'm looking around in the spring and it's all back the way it was. Well, you showed you quit caring about it. And when you showed you quit caring about it, why should they? So you got to stay with it. And it starts with that shared vision that Collins was talking about, the purpose and the BHAG and all that good stuff. A good leader inspires people so that they want to be committed to this. They aren't just complying to it. They want to be committed to it. and you constantly nurture it. It comes up in your conversations. You notice when people start to do a little, oh, that was great. I saw somebody doing purposeful noticing. Consistent is a good nurturing tool. And you keep going with that until they start to have confidence that yeah, I am doing what she's expecting. I'm working toward the goal, and it makes sense, and I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in what this team is doing. The other article I'm going to give you is from John Cotter. It's coming out the next time, but there is one short little, in your handout, there is Cotter's 8 steps. So there is a short handout of Cotter's 8 steps in this handout as well, I think. I believe it's toward the back. He wrote this article you're going to get about why change fails. And it won the Harvard Business Review, and it was so overpoweringly exciting that he has written about 5 other books, all using the same model. I mean, if something's not broken, why fix it? He even made a video and a book called Our Iceberg is Melting, where he explained his model using penguins. He did that because of the great, I believe, of the great success of a movie called Who Moved My Cheese, or a book called Who Moved My Cheese. If you haven't seen Who Moved My Cheese, it's on this week's wiki. That also talks about the troubles and the problems with change. What Cotter says that you have to start out is you have to make people want to change. Because given the choice of changing or not changing, the easiest thing to do always is not change. So you have to make it so that it's more desirable to change. The fastest way, he says, is creating a sense of urgency. Oh my gosh, this has got to get done, or and so that they fear not changing rather than fearing the change. Now that sounds pretty negative, to make people fear. But there is something really true to it. If you don't believe it, turn on any commercial you see between now and next Tuesday. Oh my gosh, if you would vote for this person, the sky is going to fall down and the earth is coming to an end because this person has been crooked since the day that they were born. You know? Sense of urgency works. The reason those commercials are on are not because they're fun. They're on because they work. You may not remember or believe what it said, but the sense of urgency plays on you at some level. They did a study where they went out to a neighborhood, and in half the neighborhood, the utility people knocked on the door with flyers and information and said, "We are going to give you some free insulation to your house. You only have to sign up for this minimal amount of whatever of it, and the rest of it." So it wasn't like they're going to have to give the bank away to get this thing. In half the cases, they said to them, "What we know is if you insulate your house better with this product, your utility bills will go down 50%. Ooh, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to have more money in my pocket." To the other half, they said, if you don't insulate your house, your utility bills will be twice as high. Which one got the insulation, signed up for the insulation? The second one. The one that said what you're going to lose instead of what you're going to gain. Now, if it doesn't carry through, you've lost credibility, and you can't keep going there over and over. You can't go over. It's the same way with the political commercials. It's like, well, I guess I can't vote for anybody in the world because they're all just really, really rotten people. You know, I mean, they've overdone it to the place where, all you do is change the channel instead of buy into what's going on. You can overdo your urgency. If you're always being the person that's saying, oh, bad things are coming, pretty soon they just think you think everything's bad. So what do? If you don't want to run around saying that things are horrible all the time, one of the things that you do is you do not assume, even like you're going to give everybody $50. Don't assume everybody wants it. Everybody will not be on board. Someone will find the loophole in whatever it is, or the cloud within the silver lining. You don't assume that they all are ready to go with this. Or people feel that they're shut out. I have reservations and you're not listening to me. And I'll make sure that other people are listening to me. That's where your resistance comes. But here's the neat thing about this. If you want to do a change, you don't have to sell every single person on your staff. You have to find the right person to influence. Pretty much 1 out of every 10 people is the influencer in the group. And if you can get them to say, let's do this, the others will follow their lead. And sometimes that person is the person that's with you, but sometimes it's the person that's not with you. If I were going to change and go to a K-8 setting instead of a K-6 setting for elementary schools, I'm going to put the 7th and 8th graders back in the elementary building for whatever reason. I would choose some people that were really for this. I would choose some families, some parents, some teachers, some whatever, to go and visit schools where it was already K-8 to see what those teachers and students and families and so forth thought. And I would also take the biggest detractor that there was. Because if I can sell that person, the rest of them will go, well, he hated it, and now he thinks it's a good thing. Now that can backfire on me if they go back and say, it's even worse than we thought, people. You know, you gotta play it. You gotta know your people. But you only have to find a few influential people and they will recruit the rest. Cotter calls this building a guiding coalition. And by the way, every time we add something new, we need to get rid of the extra baggage. When the new system came in to electronically put attendance into the office, we were like, yay, nobody knocking on the door and asking for the card and kids running up and down the hall with the cards and all that stuff. It's all going to be on the computer. No, we have to turn it in electronically and write it on the card. Why? Well, what happens if the computers go down? Well, then maybe we should just do the cards. Oh, no, the computer system. So now we were doing 2. Didn't really sell us to do the new program when now we got double attendance duty. You have to decide what are the old things that we can let go of. And if you can offer people, we're going to let go of this thing so that there's room for that thing. But think about what we're doing to curriculum. It's like, how many more things can we shove into that day? And are they all equally relevant and doing what we need them to do? The problem is we usually cling to the familiar instead of the new if given the choice. People would have gone back and used the old cards instead of the new computers because they were familiar with it, even though the new ones worked better. So how do we find what that stuff is that's the right stuff to get rid of and not get rid of and not get rid of the unimportant stuff? Remember that principal I worked for that, put the kids 2 boxes away from each other but didn't pay any attention to the overall morale of the school or all the other things? Well, there was a guy, he was an Italian economist named Pareto. You heard of the Pareto principle? It's sometimes called the 80-20 principle, which is really kind of people always think everything has to add up to 100%. If this is all the stuff that's going on, all the things that we should change. What Pareto says is of that, about 20% of it is the crucial, important stuff. And the rest of this is the two squares across from each other, or what color you painted the wall, or you know, the minutia stuff. And where he came about this as an economist is what he said is 20% of the people paid 80% of the taxes. 20% of the criminals caused 80% of the crime. And you'll hear this all the time. It's 20% of, I'll bet you you've heard that 20% or 50% or sometimes even 5% of the kids causes 80% or 90% or 95% of the discipline problems. Pareto principle. So if you can work on what that crucial 20% is, what Pareto says is you can really solve 80% of what's going on. If I can find the right 20% of the teachers to believe in my new change, they will make 80% of that change happen. It's not 80 plus 20 equals 100. There's no 100 to this. Okay? So the important thing is what is that, finding that thing, and not to be sucked into spending all my time solving all of this stuff, because then I'm only really going to solve 20% of my issues. And I still got this 80% out here hanging out there. So Pareto principle is looking for the critical few instead of the insignificant stuff. What's the critical few stuff that matters, that makes a difference, and not be seduced into solving non-problems. We are not drawn to the 20% because they're the hard ones to crack. You know, the 20% of the teachers that cause 80% of the discontent in the school are not the people you and I want to hang around with. That's one of the things that I found out when I became an administrator, is instead of hanging out with the people that were successful and great and doing everything and making my life wonderful, I was spending my time with the marginal people, the people that, you know, I was having to watch the one. I mean, it was just like, I'm like, this is like school. I mean, of course it was like school. But the adults and the children, the same thing, that you were spending your time. So what was the 20% I could solve with those people that would solve 80% of what was going on? So here's one way to figure out what those critical things are. This is called force field analysis. It comes out of other, it doesn't come out of education. It comes out of other places. But in your handout, you're going to find a page that looks like that. Could you find that in your handout? And what force field analysis says is that we want to figure out what is it that you really want. What is it that you really want? Okay? And you write it down. Now you don't have to write it. You can write it over on the back of your handout someplace else if you don't want to wreck this page or something. I never like to write on my handouts either. But you can write it on it if you want to. Okay, what is it that you really want? So think about it. Something. It can be something in your house. It could be something at school. It could be something in your career. It could be something in the world. What's something you really want to change? That's hard to change. It's not like changing your shoes, okay? It's going to be something that's hard and complex to change. Okay? And you state it. Because sometimes you have to look back at that and say, is that really what I want? Is it deeper than that? You know, but when I, you know, good example, teacher says, I want the children to be quiet. Well, why do you want them to be quiet? So they can listen. Okay, so you really don't want them to be quiet. You really want them to listen. If they're quiet, they can be quiet and thinking about the football game. You really want them to be attentive. You don't want them to be quiet. You want them to be attentive. So sometimes how you state your problem is how you're going to get solve your solution. Okay, so this is the way I want it to go. You know, I want it to move in this direction. What things are helping it move in that direction? And you write those down. So let's say my change is that I want to have more teachers sign up to teach summer school. Just think of something, okay? What things help me get teachers to sign up for summer school? Salary. There's one. Okay, that's a Hirschberg, but it is a real one. It's a real one. Because if there isn't any, I don't think I'm going to have anybody sign up. They'll be dissatisfied. Okay? Chance of leadership. A chance to do something creative and different than they normally do. A way to improve the next year because I already have a relationship with those kids. It'll make the rest of my... Okay, so you write down all the things that... And I keep thinking, what are those things that helps move me in the direction I want to go? Okay, what are the things that are restraining, that are keeping it from happening? Okay, my summer school teachers, they don't get very much summer anyway. They don't want to work with those kids, whatever those kids are. There's only window air conditioners in the school, and that doesn't really do it. What are those things that are keeping people from signing up? Now, once you have that done, if you can strengthen these, it'll move. Because right now, this is the problem. I'm at a standstill. If I can weaken these, it will move. So you've got one started. You can use that one or you can use this one. And we're going to have about 3 minutes to kind of play with this idea. If you don't have a great idea, how about this one? You're a building leader. You ask them to change parent-teacher conferences. That's something that's on a lot of your minds right now anyway. Some way you want to change parent-teacher conferences to make them better. Okay, so there's an idea if you don't have one. Work with people at your table or near you if you're the only one at your table, and see if you can play with this force field to see how you can move your idea forward. So let's practice.
Well, I just looked at staff development days, like researching those, but well, like most of them like change and breakout sessions, but they're not really relevant. For everybody, so like maybe breaking them into primary, secondary. Right now, I want to. And we had our last one was like teacher-led, so we got her to sign up. That was way more than just signing up for these sessions. Teacher,
30 seconds.
I would say motivation to learn yeah, wisdom.
End with the thoughts you're on, please. End with the thoughts you're on, please. So, the point of this model is that instead of just doing pros and cons, those types of things that we normally do when we're trying to figure out complex things, those are static. These are the goods, these are the bads. This talks about change as a fluid thing, that there are forces involved with it. Again, I'm not going to do one of these on what I'm going to make for supper. You know, there's no reason to do that. But things like this are helpful when you're in the middle of a complex change and it's not working. To go and say, okay, what do I got going for me? Sometimes you don't recognize those things until you really step back from it and see, maybe I have some resources I haven't really tapped deep enough. Or maybe there's some things in the culture that I haven't really thought about, like, cool teachers don't teach summer school, I hadn't thought about that. So how do I make it cool to teach summer school? So that I can move things forward. So when we think about that right side of removing those barriers, the things that are stopping change, there's really 3 things that you think about. What are the systems or the procedures or the way we do things that are outdated? That's something you can change. What are the way people think about these things? When I say outdated people, I'm not like, well, let them all retire. Besides not being an accurate way to do that who needs to change and who doesn't, outdated people means sometimes they're uneducated in the new whatever. And so they're behind the up-to-date of what the change is and why it's needed and so forth. So you change the environment, you change the way we do things, and you change how the people come to whatever it is, because those things stop you, and usually it's a combination of them. When you're planning with your planning team, you need to have a common enemy. And that's kind of a negative way of saying that. But what the common enemy can be not enough resources. The common enemy can be it's too late at night. Then it doesn't have to be them. It's usually better if it's an issue than the students is a problem or the teachers. I'm not talking about blaming type of things. But when you think about outdated, would you go to a dentist that used 1950 techniques? They were fine for those people in 1950. They thought it was great. But we wouldn't probably go to them. Or the 1960s car mechanic. Mm-hmm. Or the 1990s doctor. And yet, how do teachers teach? Do they teach the way that it's now? Or do they teach the way that they were taught? We parent the way we were parented. We teach the way we were taught. That's where oftentimes the barriers come in. Just about ready for break, so hang with me just a little bit more. So why do people resist change? They resist change because they're comfort in where they are. Even if it's bad, at least I know what it is, right? Even if I'm in a swamp full of alligators, I at least understand the alligators, and I don't want you putting snakes in my alligator pit here. I understand the alligator. Right? There's a comfort in the way things already are. We feel that when things are stable, we're safer. Going out and doing something new allows us to fail. We may not be doing too well, but gosh, if we change, we might be doing worse. And we fear the unknown. When people face a change, even a positive change, these things become risky. And they don't want to risk. And they go through the stages of grief for what you've asked them to change. Help me with the stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining. All of those things happen. Okay, you're asking me to change. I'll change this much. Okay? Well, okay. This is the one I always hear. We did this in the 70s and it didn't work then, so I'm just going to go back to my classroom and do it like this, and next year we'll do a new flavor of the year, right? Change resistors, we caused it by making people change too often and not sticking with the changes that mattered. Anger, oh my goodness. That's teacher lounge language. You hear it. You use it. We all do. If you know it's natural, when it happens, you don't take it personally. Hello, here's our new change, and anger comes back at you. You help people through it just as if somebody died. They have to work through these things. But you don't ignore things. Anything you ignore is okay. I have been ignoring people not completing assignments because I've been understanding I had to quit ignoring it. And you know who's happy? The people who've been turning their assignments in early. Yes, she's finally got after those people that are lagging behind. They said it to themselves as they were saying, oh man, she didn't say that at first. She's really, and that's what they say. But inside, the people that were doing what they were supposed to be doing says, yes, you're pulling the weeds. It's not going to happen here. I'm justified in what I was doing. You go up to the teacher who's always been leaving 15 minutes early and you say, you know what? I need you to be here the full time. If you do not have enough to do for the rest of that time, please come and see me because I got a lot of things that I could use your help with. And they go storming down the torture. Do you know what she told me? And the other teachers go, oh yeah, she's just a crabby person. What? And inside they're going, yes, I'm tired of her going home early every day. And guess what? The other ones that were sneaking out 5 minutes earlier thinking, maybe I better watch that time. And I don't have to go until the next person and the next person and the next person and the next person. I've drawn the line in the sand and I deal with the anger. Yeah, it's not, you know what? There's nothing magical about that clock. But on the other hand, if you don't put in the time, you want your students all to leave 15 minutes early every day, that's okay. You know? You have to stand and draw that line or you lose your credibility. If it's due on Tuesday, that doesn't mean that you never say, okay, you can have till Friday. But you don't wishy-washy on the important things. If that deadline isn't that important, then you wishy-washy. But if it's got to be, then you got to have that for your credibility. It's good to give one more chance. But you know the difference between this level of students and my doctoral students, if I bring in a crisis to both groups, people at this level who are moving into leadership, but they haven't had to always be on the front line, like the superintendents and the associate superintendents and the principals and so forth in that program. These people will give everybody an extra chance because they're used to working, got to give them another chance, got to give them. What the people that have been on that front line of the leadership says, you know what? I'm responsible for the safety of however many people. I'm responsible for the income for however many staff. There is no second chance when it is kids learning. There is no second chance when it's building safety. There are some places where enough's enough, and the first time's the last time I'm going to say it, and this is the way it's going to be. Because the responsibility goes with the leadership. Last one before break, I promise. So we got this thing we really don't want to bring to the staff. We're going to make you change this big major thing, and you're going to hate it. I know you're going to hate this, so I'm going to bring it to you. So I'm going to bring it to you a little bit. Guess what, everybody? You've never heard this word before, but we're going to differentiate instruction. Okay? We're going to differentiate. Yeah, I know you've all heard the word many times. But I was the person that got to introduce this topic to people all across the state of Nebraska and some western Iowa. And I loved it. I love differentiation. It was, and I was like, as they came in, because I was telling them the way they taught for the last 100 years wasn't probably the best for a lot of the kids that they were teaching. So, went into one really unsuccessful place. They said, we will differentiate one subject a year. Okay? Okay, so you're an elementary teacher, you're a second grade teacher, you choose which subject you're going to differentiate. They chose spelling. How did they differentiate? Well, the kids that could spell well got hard words, and the kids that couldn't spell well got easy words, and they did it. The next year, I was looking for the second subject. It never happened. It never happened. Sometimes when you go in and this is the model, we're going to do it, and then we're going to do it. If it's good and I believe in it, why should we wait till next year? Stories told about the realtor who went in and she talked to this man about the 65-year-old house that he was buying. And the realtor said, now when you go into the house, make a list of all the things you want to change. And make a plan that you're going to do all those changes in the first 6 months. And the man goes, 6 months? I can't do that all in 6 months. I don't have the resources. I'm still trying to pay for the move and all that kind of stuff. I'm a really good planner. I will work on it for the next few years. Every few months I'll do one of those changes. And the realtor said, no, that isn't going to work. Because after 6 months you get used to it. And you will step over the dead body in the living room. Now, then she doesn't really mean a dead body. But don't you have some things in your house like you have to nudge this cabinet door, and you've always had to nudge this cabinet door. And so instead of fixing it, you nudge it again. You get used to the way things are. Ruling came out. Elementary teachers needed to have 400 planning minutes in 2 weeks. At the time, they had less than 200. Okay, this is ancient history, but it was my life. Okay? So they came out to the elementary teachers and they said, well, you know what? We don't have enough of these people hired, and we don't have enough PE teachers hired, and we don't have enough of this. So we're going to have second graders will get PE twice this week, and we're going to go on this 10-day cycle. Anybody heard of the 10-day cycle? No? Okay. 10-day cycle. And so then next year we will hire those extra people, and everybody will get PE. And then the next year we'll hire 10 years later. They're still doing the 10-year cycle. They still haven't hired any more PE or music teachers to make these things happen. And when I went to the leadership team and said, you know what? Here's a way you can do this, that you can make it be a 5-day cycle so people aren't nuts. Because what second grader remembers day 7? They remember Tuesday, maybe. But they don't remember day 7. We can do it on a 5-day of the week by changing the calendar 7 days out of the year. So we say the day before Thanksgiving is a day 1. But generally, day 1's Monday. So I had it all laid out. No, we didn't have to buy any more people. We didn't have to do anything. It just had to change the calendar. I had a supervisor slam the desk, stand up and say, but I love the 10-day cycle. Really? You aren't the one that has to tell the second grader to remember their gym shoes, their violin, or, why do you love it? Because I only have to spend a half a day scheduling the staff into the building. If you change it to 5, I will have to spend a whole day. I'm like, you spend a whole day, and the teachers can spend their whole life trying to figure this out, and the traveling staff can spend their whole life trying to figure which day to go. When I left the district 5 years later, they were still doing the 10-day cycle. I think they still are. It makes no sense. All right. You better take 6 minutes. I think I'll calm down by then. See you after 6 minutes. Sure. You can see them
Yeah, but I just did a graphic. She said you can write outline, bullet points, anything, just
we sat down and
anything
laid out
just to tell her that it knows it's
if you want superintendent certification with your doctorate, you might as well go ahead and get it first. If you don't want superintendent certification, you can lay some of this stuff in as electives so that you can double dip, as long as you don't make this degree right now in another master's degree. If it's only in management, then you pay for some of those hours, but you have to already accept it in the program.
Okay, so that was my question. So I'm taking jobs for the last year right now.
I was trying to remember something.
In order for me to fly be able to
I don't know.
If not, you can come in unclassified to us.
Okay, because that's what I mean. Okay, so then when we
Debbie, if you like, you're right to make it in February. Classes you take in spring semester, I have way too many people. Right now, I know that probably is want to be in February. So, yeah, it's not a good situation, but I don't want that.
Okay, so these are what input as to next semester, anything that will be
Anything, all be equally as good.
and
Wasn't that a nice way of saying I didn't say it was all equally as bad?
Well,
It's all equally as
I know,
good.
but yeah, exactly.
That's plenty good enough.
Okay, the only question, I'm wanting to get
I'm gonna do personal. It doesn't have to be on this list.
That's fine.
It's
So,
That's fine. All I want to know is where the money is going.
like,
Yeah,
for
but
each one thing she asked for, so first I'm gonna introduce it, so that I can look at like, the different viewpoints, like, this is what it is, this is how it is.
Start in,
And
because
then
some
the
people
second
can
is
do a
like
lot
a
of things
paragraph,
and
and then
explain
it
a
actually
lot of
shows
different pieces
like,
about what to
in my
Other
classroom.
people can take one small piece
And
just
just like
go in,
pull out
knowing
elements
that
that I use that
you
all
can
teachers can use, so they had certain support from administration, so then I'm gonna then just, well, what can I do to first get teachers to try it out, second to make it relevant to all classrooms and all students, and how it connects to each
you can, but it's really right, feel like you can drop it away, if you've got plenty of balance. Just put it in your folder.
Well, no, this, like, some of these aren't, like, this talks about the work, some of them aren't like things, like, these, but, like, talking about the viewpoints, so I'm giving it from
Same story I'm telling him.
perspective,
If you go into it, and if it's like becoming like this big monster that's overwhelming, and just do one specific part of it.
like, or, like, my sources, I have, this is my primary source, but I'll,
And if social is enough, you can put that in the title, social aspects of this, and stop. But if you're saying, I don't want to study, I just want to broaden it out and give an overview of the whole thing, that's good too. So start with the part you care about the most, in case it's enough.
Yeah, alright. And then I was looking at my list. Okay, so I've already done 2 elective classes. I did that in the summer, and I did my 1 lead. What I was looking at doing is
Which lead you should take? Should take Dr. Christie's or Dr. Smith?
I did Dr. Smith.
Okay, so you should.
Yeah.
like, so here's the May, June has this one, July has this one,
That's gonna be the next
It will be this spring,
and I don't think it's
or next, or
this
this
is
summer.
like what's on the
One day.
agenda.
Both of them
So I
will
just
be
did
about
try
the
to
same.
she said I was going to that one, so I guess
So it depends on what day.
I might do summer just because it might be easier for
In
me.
and out and go.
Yeah. So what I was looking at is maybe because of Smith,
That's what professional development, these two are together.
those
so
are.
we would miss the first week.
Alright, and, okay, right here, secondary internship.
Yep.
And those classes are.
I'm gonna
would
ask
that be a problem?
maybe this
Since
college
that
like
class
has
would
this
be
specific
really meets those 2 times, would that be?
This is just like you and I was calendar.
I sign up, it may not let you sign up, and so we may, you know, so it may have to, yeah. And so that's a discussion to have with it, because Dr. Smith's class meets on certain nights, Dr. Hayes' class meets on certain nights, and some of those nights are the same one. So you'll leave one class 10 minutes early and come the other class 10 minutes late, split the difference or something like that. No, except that the internship is something you can do even in the summertime. You can be doing those 90 hours anytime.
Okay, and that's why I thought the internship
And
was,
so,
and we're gonna be writing papers on the hours that we're doing.
yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And so the thing is, you can go ahead and do the work and sign up for it in the summer, because the summer we're going to be doing it like all on Wednesdays or something like that. And it's much more independent study in the summer. So that works for you. I'm doing internship every
I'll be able to get 4, and then 4, and then 3, so I need 7. Right now I'm at.
You need the 7.
Yeah, so that'll get me above that 18. So, yeah, very good.
I have a question for you. For the dates of the session, this is like we have another session. So the first June session is the 1st through July 3rd, but that will, this would be like the first week of class.
Yes. Starts the second week of class. 4 weeks. This is the first week of June. This is the second week of June and the first week of July. So in that first week, you take the first week to make leave, and the other 4 weeks makes the June session.
Okay.
Because our regular summer is 4 by 4. So in a 5-week session, the first week is leave, second, third, fourth, fifth is class.
Okay, so that makes so I can do both, and then
You never have a class at the same time.
okay, so both days would be the same thing, and then like the July session would be the 1st of July, the 6th through the 14th.
It starts with the 6th, but it only goes 4 weeks. It won't go to August 14th. It'll go 4 weeks in a row. We cannot change what the university says.
No, that's okay.
We run July 6th, go count 4 weeks.
Okay.
4 days, or 2 days a week, whatever it is.
Okay, so I'll be done tomorrow. That makes me feel better. We go back to school super early. I think kids are back on the 11th, and we're back.
And we're hybrid with those, so even those days, those are certain days like those.
Are you gonna, like, the things that we turn into today about what we're doing, are you gonna be giving us feedback on this? Like, if you hate it,
It's really scary to me that we talk to people right away. It's just okay, so So how do we do this? One of the best pieces of advice to give someone is to lead by example, whether they are your student in your class, people in your social organization, your bowling team, your people in the country, whatever that is. Leading by example is extremely, extremely powerful and long-lasting. Demonstrated by telling you a very old story. Albert Schweitzer was known as one of the most humanitarian people that has ever lived. I mean, it's like Mother Teresa, those types of people, Nelson Mandela, Albert Schweitzer was getting I believe it was the Nobel Prize, but don't quote me on that. It's one of those big prizes for being a humanitarian. As he got off the train, it really is dating him, isn't it? As he got off the train, all of the porters and so forth were surging off the train with him, but around him clustered all of the press with their cameras and their notepads and Dr. Schweitzer, come, and on the other side of the press was the mayor and the key to the city and all of the high muckety mucks to bring, here's this important man coming, and they wanted to honor this great humanitarian. And as he got off the train, Dr. Schweitzer said, just wait a minute, stop. He walked down to the next car where he saw an elderly woman struggling with her bags, trying to get her suitcases off the train. He picked up her suitcases and he took her to the nearest cab and helped her into the cab and got her suitcases taken care of. And then he came back and talked to the mayor. He didn't have to say anything. He led by example. But when he was asked, if you think it's important to lead by example, Dr. Schweitzer, he said, it's not the most important thing. It's the only thing. There's nothing that beats it. Walking the walk, if you say to do it and you do something different. Remember those differentiation classes that I had? I used to go to buildings, and in some buildings the administration would sit down with the teachers and learn this new vocabulary and learn these things and discuss how that's going to work in their building. The worst one I had was a principal that came in after school. Teachers straggled in, which already started to tell me something. When they were all in there, she said, "Hey, gang, this is a lady from TAC. She's going to tell you about this stuff that we have to do." And I have some stuff to do in my office now, so please pay attention to her. I was ready to walk home at that point. Who was going to listen to me? She just told them that this is compliance only, no commitment, and I don't believe in it, and I'm not even going to see whether you pay attention or buy into this, because I have told you it doesn't matter. Leading by example is something you can't hide or pretend, because eventually it comes out. Personal accountability, another good little book, which if you can find it at half price someplace, is called QBQ, The Question Behind the Question. And it's all about personal accountability. Nice model about if it's to be, it's up to me type of thing. Human nature is self-serving bias. Human nature is the sun was in my eyes, I didn't get the memo, I have things to do in my office. I don't know why differentiation didn't happen in my building. I got up and told them to listen to the lady from TAC. She must have been terrible. They didn't listen at all. But sometimes we have to add that reward. That's why those 5, that's a good power in there. Remember, rewards and punishments are good immediate changes. You want things to change quickly, you put up a reward and you put up a punishment. But by the way, when you do that, make it be a finite thing. Here's the rule for the... that same principal that did the minutia stuff got up at one point and said, now here's the new lesson plan format. You must do this. It will never change. This is the way it's going to be for the rest. She hardly had the sentence out before the new changes came out from the office, So when you're changing things, you got to make sure that it has finite, we're going to have this thing and we're going to have rewards, but it's going to only be, because if those rewards don't fix things in the next 2 weeks or 6 months or whatever, it's time to reevaluate and make a different reward. They find all the loopholes. You know that from teaching. If you do this by this certain time, you get this many points. They figure out all the ways to not do the work and still get the points by the time you get done the second assignment. But these are the kinds of rewards that you think about because they get different results. Formal rewards, formal awards are told ahead of time, and they have a specific time when they're going to be given. we are going to give honor roll on this date to these people for this level grade. And how do we do that? We don't just email you a message. No, we get you up and we parade you across the stage. We give you a certificate. We get you in front and do that. There are some good things about that, and there are some bad things, because every time you award someone, there are the other people sitting out in the audience who have been punished by not getting the award. I was one of the first people to get the Buffett Award, one of the first 15. They called me 2 years later and said, what were the good things that happened to you, and how were you punished for getting the award? I said, punished? And then I thought about it. Oh, yeah, I get called the Buffett teacher. Let the Buffett teacher do it. It never was something nice. Yeah, formal awards have their punishments that come with them. Informal awards. Informal awards are meeting a specific goal, and they're usually symbolic rather than costing anything. Informal awards are things that are more interactive, that you're trying to get something going, so you informally award people for doing it. Day-to-day awards are those simple acts of kindness, the praise. I noticed you doing something that I'm impressed with what you did. I mean, I try to do that on your papers. I really liked that acrostic that you wrote. I didn't make that up. I really liked it if I saw it. I saw 32 of them, and I really liked yours. You know, and so informal praise. I did that with a doc student once. There was an assignment, and they had to write me a paragraph about something, and he said, do I really have to write a paragraph? And I said, no, you have to write me a haiku. Smart mouth that I had, I said that. He wrote me a haiku. Every message I got for the next year was in a haiku. So to one-ups him, I always changed his haiku into a sinkane and sent it back. And he still sends me haikus. But it did something with him. It was a creative way. It was tapping into some choice. He didn't have to write the paragraph. And I got some really cool stuff out of that. And by me writing back to him in that type of format was recognition. That was cool. I'm going to play along too. Didn't cost me a thing. Improved the relationship. Made for some really strange messages. Change is a risk. And it's a fine line between too much risk that's dangerous and not enough risk that's dangerous. Not changing enough. We're going to talk about that with conflict. Having no conflict, having no risk, makes you in danger of rotting, of decaying, of becoming worse than you are. So you got to find where that tightrope is, where it's risky enough, but you know you're going to make it to the other side. If I tell you I'm going to walk the tightrope and I put it on the floor, nobody's going to applaud when I get to the other side. But if I put it so high that you're afraid I'm going to die, you probably aren't going to enjoy the experience either. Okay? You got to find that sweet spot where there's enough risk that people are proud when they've done it, and safe that if you put up, we're going to do a new way of teaching. And now, and next week I'm going to come in and do your teacher evaluation based on this new thing. The risk level went up so high that, you've tied something that's precious to that. They don't get a chance to try it out and fail. So they probably aren't going to try it as spectacularly as you would have had otherwise. This model, and by the way, you're looking for something in your handout that looks like that now. We've turned back a couple pages. It looks like that. This model is probably one of the most used things out of this whole idea of change. It comes from McGraw, and I have seen this. In fact, I saw it in an office in this building this week from someone who was in this class 3 or 4 years ago. I also taught women from Afghanistan who took my notes back to Afghanistan and published them. It is the only book on school leadership in Pakistan, Iran, or Afghanistan. It's my words. I have no idea what it says. It's written in Dari. This is in it. It's one of the few things that I know what's in it because I recognize the boxes. But it made sense to them too. So hopefully it's going to help with you. This is talking about managing a complex change. When things are big and complex, you've got to have all the pieces together. It helps you figure out. And this helps me two ways. It helps me to plan for a change. It also helps me when things are going wrong and everybody's confused. Look what's missing. If everybody's confused about what's going on, there isn't any vision. They don't know why they're doing, or they don't know what a good one looks like. They don't know. So see how this works two ways? One is I can figure out what the vision is, but also when I look at my followers and I see, you know, we're having change, but it's really coming slow, I might need to put out some incentives there to make it go faster. Really kind of a cool thing. So here's the pieces of it. You need to have a vision, and it needs to be the shared vision. Not just me as the leader figuring out what's going on, but does everybody know what their part is? What, you know, not only what is the vision, but what do you want from me to make that vision happen? Okay? And I believe in my role of that vision. Do I have the skills? Does everybody, okay, now that I know what I'm supposed to do I know how to do it? Do I know what a good one looks like so that I know I accomplished it? Without that, when you don't have the skills, you're afraid somebody's going to emperor's new clothes you and say, you're doing it wrong. That's horrible. You're fired. I mean, that's all those kinds of things when you don't have the skills, so people cover up for that, don't they? They don't come back and tell you, I don't know how to do this. They don't do that. They pretend, they look at each other, and the blind follow the blind, and everybody, you know. So you as the leader need to know that they've got the skills. If there isn't any incentives, it may happen, but it may not happen at the rate. If they don't know that there's some good coming out of this, you may not get the speed. Remember, punishments and rewards make things happen faster. When there aren't enough resources, people are frustrated. And this is where my Afghan women, when I said that, all the heads went, mm-hmm. And you would too, if you had teachers that hadn't had a salary in over 6 months, and you only had one book for every 3 kids, you would be frustrated too. Resources are not always books and salaries, though. What are the 2 biggest resources that school leaders or people in schools have? Time and people. Time and people. Okay? And you can manage those things. You can't always manage which kind of textbooks they order. Finally, if you don't have an action plan that says the fallback, if this doesn't work, we'll do this, and this is our plan B, and this is what we'll do first, and this is how we'll evaluate whether that's working, and there's false starts. We try it, and then it fails, and then you don't know, what do we do next? We got this much done. Okay, now what do we do? So an interesting map. Let's do a 3-minute practice on that. You can do it on whatever you want to. You can do it on the same problem you were talking about before. That might help. But if you want a new one, how about this? You're going to ask every staff member in a large building of people at whatever level that are teaching children to put service learning, and that doesn't mean just going out and serving. That means the service and the learning tie together. That they're going to do service learning in their class with their students in this semester. Okay? So decide what you need to do. See, now that we're going to use this for practice, decide what you need to do and what you need to check on so that you got all your bases covered. 3 minutes. You can use my idea, you can use yours, but use an idea and see if you can make all of these things happen so that your change happens. What I just put up was service learning in every classroom.
Yeah. So if we were, I mean, we can go back to professional development. So, professional development, like the vision, like teachers and administrators being able to understand what really out of this without
The way they have it now, they
whether it's like, so look at the like what it means to decide behind your session, you got to make this yours, or like skills or
30 seconds.
No, that I think that made the one I took was and they had it called and you got to like after the session where you wanted to, and then you got 10 minutes to it, and then you go back together and build it and share what you think together for the organization, what you're going to try to do. So the action plan, I guess the longer way from now, from the way how we're getting it all, those that are so big.
Stand with the thoughts around, please. I know I'm not giving enough time. Change takes a long time to plan, and it's something you don't sit down and go, okay, 3 minutes, go, type of thing. But I'm weighing that against the clock ticking that we've got other things to do in our lives right now. You got the idea is what I'm looking for. In reality, this is something that you put out and you mull over time, and you revisit and see how we're doing. Many complex changes, when you're changing a culture or even the school climate or a norm, many of those things that were on the underside of the iceberg take 3 to 5 years to change. And oftentimes, we aren't given 3 to 5 years to make the change happen. We implement a new technique, and we pre-test it at the beginning of the year, and we post-test it at the end of the year, and the scores didn't go up, it failed. So let's do something else. Throw that program out, let's go do something. What they don't think about is if you throw people into that, it takes the teachers a year to become understanding even what it's supposed to be doing. The kids were doing things one way last year, and now you've jerked them out of that way and put them into another way. Of course there's going to be an implementation there. There hasn't been time for people to work out the kinks of whatever it is. So having that kind of patience for the 3 to 5 years, that's where these types of things are coming into play. Not in a 3-minute thing, in a 3-year thing. That's why I believe I still see this on people's bulletin boards in their office, because they're frustrated and they're looking to figure out where's my change going wrong on me, and I got to quit sitting there and just complaining and saying, I've got a bunch of loser people working for me, or I must be a horrible leader, and quit worrying about those things and start to say, what are the factors? Can I pull my emotions away from this and take that long view and see okay, this isn't working here. What can I change without pulling the whole thing down around us? Because it does take time. And oftentimes we do not respect the stages of grief people go through over the old stuff, the amount of time it takes them to learn to do the new stuff, and the amount of time beyond that, once they learn the new stuff, to make it be a habit, takes even longer. But just like the little kid who's getting measured by the inch, we need to respect that things that are going to be setbacks. You feel like you walked forward one step and back three. You keep walking forward. You keep respecting that people are going to have trouble with that. There's going to be mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. People are going to doubt. You've got to still keep your vision of what it is you're looking for and why it is you're doing it through the tough times. Again, reinforcing what systems thinking was telling you is that you need to understand yourself and be patient with yourself. You need to understand the others that are going through this and realize, remember, just like when we were up there changing things, everybody's not going to do the same thing at the same time. They're going to go through the change in their own way. And the system itself will only change after these other things become comfortable with the change. Trying to change from the system in to the people is not near as satisfying as trying to get the people on board to buy into what's going out so that they change the system. And when you measure your results, be careful that you're measuring the right thing. We are in a terrible state of practicing A and measuring B. Practicing A and measuring B. I have people that even try to do that in their dissertation. They want to say, if I do this with the teachers, attendance of the students is going to rise. I don't think the teachers put the kids on the bus in the morning. And I don't think in a lot of cases it's even the kids that are making the decision whether they are on the bus in the morning. So I'm putting incentives for teachers to get better attendance in the hopes that the student, there's a disconnect. When you want to measure results in a school, the first thing you should measure is the change in the adults. The adults will be the ones that pull the students through it. If the teachers don't have the buy-in, if the same way the principal goes stomping out and says, I got other stuff to do in my office, if you don't have the growth in the teachers, you're not going to get the growth in the students. And as the leader, my first year, I just wanted to, I would sit in there and watch some of the most ridiculous teaching in my mind. It probably was not that ridiculous, but I knew I could do better. And I was like, could I please just let that teacher go take an hour off and I'll teach these kids how to divide. They don't, You can't go running all over doing that. You've got to put it on the backs of the adults to do, and the trust with the adults to do it. So that's what needs to be measured. People are always saying, I'm going to measure the student success. I'm like, you better measure teacher perceptions of what's going on first. Because if the teacher's perceptions are off, the students are going to be all over the place, or that's not why that happened. So measure effort, measure insights, measure buy-in. Reward those things. Reward spectacular failures, because at least spectacular failures taught us what not to do again. It's much better than not trying. And you don't have to get every person on board with it. Remember that differentiation stuff? In my own building, I was a difficult person to be the prophet to get up and do the talking about, because I got up to my own teachers that I taught with and taught them too. Hardest group I had. Well, not as hard as that one where the principal stomped out on me, but just about. Because they saw me teach Tuesday and Monday and Friday before that, and they saw what I was doing, and they're like, is she walking the walk or is she not? And they were tough. They were tough to go with, but I didn't have to get everybody. I did it myself. I had some other people that wanted to do it too. We were doing these things. The kids were excited. The parents wanted their kids in our classes. You know, some things were happening that at first there was a large group of people that wanted to do the spelling route, you know, those types of things. I knew I'd won a year and a half after I started, when the tough nut of the school came in after school and said, you know, you're having so much fun, and I think it's a drag. I am hating my job. I hate this. How are you having so much fun doing this? I said, let's teach this next lesson, and let's go through it, and you take some of the fun parts of it and see how it works. The critical mass makes if you get to that, Malcolm Gladwell calls it the tipping point. You keep going and you keep going, and you don't realize there's a change happening when all of a sudden something that's probably not very important tipped it. When that teacher tipped and said, you're having fun, will you do it with me? Now all of a sudden all those others that were they were the outs. They were isolated. They were the alones. And it was hard for them to continue to not join in. Doesn't always happen, but a lot of times it happens and we're not aware of it. Was on a building team, and we had people that were giving us goofy discipline referrals. So-and-so didn't have their shirt tucked in. Somebody else didn't bring a pencil to class. You know, stuff that they could handle, and they kept sending it to us. And I would take the child and the note back to the teacher and say, this is what I would say. This is something that you can handle. I put the child in here. This is something you can handle. I can handle it, but if I handle it, you have to live. You no longer have a say in what happens. If you send it to me in the office, it is now my control. Do you want to give me control over this? Well, they didn't. They just wanted me to call mom and make this thing happen. Well, we did this for a long time. And one day I said to the other person, I said, do you realize we aren't getting any of those dumb referrals anymore? I haven't had a dumb referral for 2 months. I never even realized it wasn't happening anymore. I don't know where the tipping point was. I don't know who finally said, you know what, give it up. They're just going to send them back to us. No matter what those kids do, they're going to send them back to us anyway. But remember, the people that were doing it right are saying, yes, those people are being held accountable for their own students. They aren't doing that silly stuff anymore. There will be a lot of early failures in a change. You have to be able to make it okay to try. You model trying and failure. I do that with technology all the time. Oh, look at this Blackboard lesson. That just went, you know, I'm going to record everything on Camtasia, except that week when it didn't work. You know, you model it. It's okay. We're human and that type of thing. If I had that, you know, level that everything had to be perfect and I pretend everything's perfect, you know it's a sham. But how do you handle it? It's not that you don't have failures. It's showing people how to have spectacular failures and be okay with it. Do you laugh it off? Do you cry and then pick yourself up? What do you do? We should be doing that for each other continually, and we should be appreciating people that are doing things differently. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. So, you got to be skillful, but you also have to be visionary. And you have to encourage those people who will try to be your partners in jumping off that high diving board and not knowing quite whether they're going to do a belly flop or a swan dive. How do you get those people off the diving board and into the pool? You inspire them. You are the cheerleader. This is the charismatic leader stuff. Now, some people inspire by being the Albert Schweitzer. Some people inspire by giving resources to those that do. I mean, there's many ways to inspire, but one of the best ways is to tell stories. I'm going to tell you a story right now. 2 weeks from now, you will not be able to tell me, even though that was really important, you will probably not be able to tell me about that matrix we just did. You'll remember the matrix, but you won't be able to tell me word for word what the matrix was all about. You won't be able to go, vision, resource. You won't be able to do it. I know. That's why we hang it up on the bulletin board. We don't remember it. You will remember this story. Because it goes to our humanness, to listen to stories, to learn by stories. That's how children are taught by their grandparents. That's how TV teaches us things, the stories they tell us, all of those things. So here's a story. A man was driving down a country road, and accidentally he drove off into the soft ditch, and his wheels spun, and he could not get his car out. So he went to the nearest farmer, and this old codger was there, and he had all these mules out there, and he said, Would you get your mules and come and take my car out of the ditch? The farmer says, I don't need all those mules. We'll just use old Warwick here. So he gets Warwick, and come on, Warwick. We go out, and he hitches Warwick up to the car. And as soon as he hitches him up to the car, he claps his hand loudly, and he says, come on, let's pull now. Go, Fred. Go, Teddy. Come on, Warwick. You can do it. Let's go, Sam. Let's move this car. And Warwick buckles under, and wouldn't you know, he gets the car back on the road. And the man says, that was incredible. That old, decrepit mule. How could he do that all by himself? Warwick's strong. He's stronger than he even knows he is. But, sir, what were all those other names? Who was Sam and Teddy and all those other names you were calling? Old Warwick's kind of blind. But as long as he thinks he's part of a team, he can do anything. I don't have to tell you the message. You got it. You remember the mules much more than if I'd given you a sermon. You'll remember it. You gotta find the right story at the right time. And you know the stories that are really interesting? Listen to the new teacher coming in and what they do. In fact, some of you even wrote about, when I was the new teacher, this is what the other teachers did and said and stuff, and some of the things you're doing. They are enculturating you into the society. So you get a new job, and they say, this is how we do it. Or you do start to do something, and they start to look at you funny, or say some little jokes that aren't really so funny. They're teaching you how we do things around here. I was told the story as a first-year teacher about Fern. Fern has gone to the teacher's lounge in heaven a long time ago, so that she won't mind me telling the story. Every time I turned around, I would be doing this or putting up a bulletin board or talking to him. Oh, Fern used to do it this way. Fern, as soon as they said Fern, I was like, you know? Fern! And I wanted to say, Fern was a rat pack person, every cupboard she has. I'm in her room and I can't put my hand on any shelf because I've got 50-year-old coloring books in my, and she was, But why did they tell me Fern stories? Because they were seeing me do something that they wanted me to do less, more, or differently. And rather than say, do it, they told me this story about somebody that wasn't there anymore. I was really worried about the K stories they told after I was gone. And don't kid yourself, they told them. Before you can influence others, you have to follow your own convictions. It comes through. If you don't really believe it, you can't pretend. Yeah, that's that cognitive dissonance thing. You've got to believe in what you're doing, and you understand that you will resist change yourself and be okay with that, and you will go through the grief stages yourself, and that's okay. If you're aware of it, you can handle it, and not repress it. And when it's happening with others, remember this. This is the best parenting line. I got this out of this great book called No More Nitpicking, Nagging, and Nudging. Great parenting book. Your goal is not to win. It is to outlast. And that works with any teacher, any middle school kid, any teacher, your goal is not to win. Because when I go for the win, I go to the power struggle immediately, right? We can go into an argument, we can go into a one-upsman, we can go back and forth. My goal is not to win. My goal is to outlast. So, okay, little child, have your temper tantrum on the floor. When you get done with your temper tantrum, you're still going to do what I told you. My goal is not to win. I'm not going to pick you up and try to control you. But when you're done with your problem, you're still going to do what I told you. My goal is to outlast. It helps a lot when you're sitting there with adult temper tantrums going on. You're like, I'm not engaging this. My goal is to outlast. Point on this, there's a lot of points in here that we've already gone over. But one of the things that I left this in here for is be persistent and look for the baby steps. You know, if you're teaching somebody to play the piano, you don't have to wait till they have every note perfect to praise them. You can praise them for a good note, a nice way they're holding their hand, good pedaling, nice dynamics, good attack on that first note. Okay, the notes were wrong, but good attack. And we do baby steps. Approximation, right? They're moving toward the behavior you want them to do. And you reward that. And you reinforce it. Change does not happen unless you stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. You have to sweat the small stuff and stay with it. How many times do you need to tell somebody so that they're even this is a communication one. If I'm going to tell somebody we're going to not have class next week, how many times should I tell this class we're not going to have class next week so that I know everybody is going to remember and not come to class next week? How many times do you think you got to tell them? Research says 7. So if you said lots more, it's possible, but on the other hand, by the time I got to 8, you probably think I'm a nag, right? And I'm taking responsibility. You're the one that's coming to class. On the other hand, if I do it less than 7, somebody's going to show up and say, you never told me. Really, it's on the calendar, it's on the syllabus, it's on the wiki, it's on Blackboard. I told you twice during class. It was on the announcements. You see how many different ways that message is coming through? Not a single way. Not me. Remember. 7 different ways people will remember. And you keep sending the message. You keep it simple and short. No class next week. I don't need to tell you the whole, instead do this as I'm going to edit it, okay? I make it memorable. Gosh, I wish I had a donkey story for that. I remember that too. Okay? And the 7 times doesn't have to all come in one day. You keep revisiting it in a different way. Now I post it. Now I put it in the morning announcements. Now I remind somebody as I see them approximating, you know what? That really was some cool differentiation. Maybe they never even realized that that's what they were doing. They just thought they were making it easier or something. Okay? Because you don't like change. You're going to like being irrelevant a lot less. But if you don't like change, you don't want to take the responsibility. Because you will deal with all of the ugliness as well as all of the joys. On the other hand, if you don't have the responsibility, you don't have the joys of working through the ugliness to get to a better. Many people go into administration in schools because they know that they could do it better than what they see. And they become disillusioned with it because they declare defeat too soon, or they declared victory too soon and then it fell apart. We look too quick to see, remember 3 to 5 years? Now that's one thing you'll remember, 3 to 5 years. Every change doesn't take 3 to 5 years. Some things you can change in 5 minutes. But complex ones you live with and live with and live with. So you pick your battles and you pick the changes that are really going to, remember the Pareto, you're going to pick the ones that really matter and stay with those. And if the battle is not yours, you need to remember Robert Frost's idea. Robert Frost says, freedom is moving easy in the harness. Now he's that old farmer poet kind of thing. He just called us all donkeys. But freedom is not having no rules. Freedom is not in being in a world where you have no restrictions. Freedom is having all those restrictions, whether it's the No Child Left Behind or the test or what the principal says that the principal's out of their mind or whatever those things are, those restrictions are, and you need to find your freedom to make the changes you need to do within that. That's not easy, but that's where freedom is. You can't run upstream against the things that you dislike. If you want to make them change, you have to find the freedom within that and then take that harness and turn the horse in a different direction. Having the tantrum on the floor isn't going to make it happen. Working within the system to make the system better is the relevant change that you and I can make by the way we live, by what we think, by the intentional things that we do. Because if you just let it happen, it goes into decay. It's intentional work that makes things improve, whether it's cleaning your closet, getting your homework done, or improving education for our children. I'm here for a bit if you have questions, but otherwise, I think we've done a good night's work. Make sure that you're getting your folder filled out, because that counts as points. And if you forgot to do it the night of the test, there's a change that you can still make up. Remember, we're still in makeup time, so folders need to be made up before you leave.
We did a folder the night of the test.
It was funny because at one time I thought about it. Is this the one with smart copies? Is that the most test for today? Session 7 activated? Or no? Or yours is on 9? What section are we on? Are we on 10?
Dr. Kaiser, Missy asked if I bring home her papers. Is there any time to leave in there? I don't think her test is in.
The test is not. So that's
The one you missed.
Is she feeling any better?
No, it sounds like she was home yesterday and today.
This was from the test day?
Yep.
Okay, and then the next one's for today?
That's it.
Do you want the gold sheets in here?
Yep, that's right.
And
And then I just have to tell